imagine it? A palanquin weighing hundreds of kilograms carried on the shoulders of 8 men, walking normally through the crowd, then suddenly starts to spin, spinning around. No one in command, no one giving orders. The palanquin bearers seem to no longer control themselves. They rush into the pond. They spin around in the cold spring water. The crowd of thousands watching, not panicking, but cheering. That was not an accident. That was what they were waiting for. Welcome to today's podcast. I will take you to a very different corner of Vietnam. Not Hoi An with its shimmering lanterns, not Sapa with its terraced fields, not Pho or Banh Mi that you often hear about. Today, I want to tell you about the spinning palanquin, a ritual in the village festivals of the Vietnamese people, and through it, tell you about how Vietnamese people view deities, view death, view history, and view their own lives. Sit down, brew a cup of tea. This story needs time. To understand the spinning palanquin, you must understand one thing first: the village. Throughout thousands of years of Vietnamese history, the village was not just a place where people lived. The village was the universe. It was the smallest yet most complete unit of the Vietnamese people. People say the king's law yields to the village's custom, meaning the court's rules can be set aside, but no one dares to touch the village's customs. And every village, no matter how small, even with just a few dozen houses, has one indispensable thing: the village communal house. The communal house is the center of the community. It is the place to discuss common affairs, handle trials, and welcome superior officials. But more important than all, the communal house is where the village guardian deity is worshipped. Thanh Hoang, which foreigners often translate as village guardian deity, the protective god of the village. But that definition does not touch its soul, because Thanh Hoang is not just an abstract god high up in the sky. Many of them were real human beings who once lived, once fought, once died for that piece of land. For example, in Hoa Muk village, right in the heart of modern Hanoi, people worship a village guardian deity who is Lady Pham Thi Un, a female general from the 8th century who helped the leader Phung Hung drive the occupying Tang army out of Hanoi. She threw herself into the To Lic River when the enemy force was too strong, refusing to be captured. And thousands of years later, the villagers still process the palanquin onto the streets to remember her every spring. That is the strangest and most beautiful thing about this belief. History is kept not in books, but in rituals, not in museums, but in the footsteps of the palanquin bearers. The Vietnamese have a saying: "When drinking water, remember its source. When drinking water, remember the roots." This saying is not just folk verse, it is a philosophy of life practiced once a year in every village. And that way of practicing is processing the palanquin. Now, let me talk about the palanquin, because many of you listening up to this point are probably imagining very different things. Palanquin, in English, usually translated as palanquin or sedan chair, but once again, that translation lacks the soul. In many other cultures, the palanquin in festivals is the means of transportation for the wealthy, for kings. In Vietnam, the palanquin in festivals is the temporary home of the deity. Imagine it like this. Deities normally reside inside temples, communal houses, statues, ancestral tablets, divine tablets. But on festival days, people invite the deity outside, onto the streets to walk with the villagers. And the palanquin is the vehicle for the deity to move.
The palanquin is elaborately crafted. Good wood, vermilion painted and gold gilded, carved with dragons, phoenixes, and flowers. There are ancient palanquins over 200, 300 years old, preserved as national treasures of the village. Before the procession, people performed the Kiệu Quay ceremony, wiping the palanquin, burning incense, reporting to the deity that today we beg to process you outside. The people who carry the palanquin, called Phu Kieu, not just anyone can do it. In many villages, they must be healthy young men of good morality, with no mourning in their family, chosen in advance. They fast, observe taboos, and wash thoroughly before the procession day. This is not a purely physical task. This is a spiritual mission. The procession does not only have the palanquin. Going ahead are flags, banners bearing the deity's name, gongs, and drums. Going along is the ceremonial music troupe, people wearing ancient costumes. Following behind are the villagers, old and young, big and small, lining up in long rows, sometimes for a kilometer. And that procession goes through the village, through every road, every alley, every field. The meaning is the deity is visiting the people, checking if the villagers are healthy, if the land is good, if the children are well behaved. And then it happens. While processing peacefully, the palanquin suddenly tilts. The bearers seem to lose balance, but they do not fall. The palanquin begins to spin, slowly at first, then faster. The bearers try to keep the rhythm, their faces flushed, sweat pouring out. The crowd begins to shout. The drum beats become more rapid. In some festivals, the palanquin spins in circles in the middle of the village road, dozens of consecutive rounds without stopping. In some festivals, the procession, all 8 bears, rushes straight into the pond, into the river, immersing themselves in the cold water, and then continue to spin the palanquin under the water for hours, while the crowd on the shore stands and watches and cheers. In some festivals, the palanquin abruptly runs out to the distant fields, to the surprise of everyone, including the people carrying it. Vietnamese people call this Kiệu Quay, or Kieu Quay, spinning palanquin or flying palanquin. Who is the deity that is so joyful? This is what I want you to pause for a moment to think about. In the West, the image of God, or the Greek gods, is often that of majestic, solemn figures looking down from above. There is a certain distance between God and human. Deities in Vietnamese folklore are different. They are close. They also have emotions. They also have times of excitement, times of sadness. And on festival days, when the village is crowded and joyful, when incense smoke is thick, when the drum beats resound, people believe that the deity is also happy, and the spinning palanquin is the manifestation of that joy. According to the explanation of the insiders, the spinning palanquin is due to the excitement of the village guardian deity. The deity is happy, wanting to run, wanting to jump, wanting to go down to the pond to bathe like ordinary people. Of course, modern science has another explanation. Researchers believe that the spinning palanquin is the result of collective hypnosis. The palanquin bearers, after a long period of psychological preparation, observing taboos, entering the sacred space with festival music resounding all around, their bodies are stimulated and lead to involuntary movements. Some say it is a physical effect. The palanquin is heavy, carried by many people, each person walking in a slightly different direction, creating a rotational moment. But you know what? To the festival participants, the explanation does not matter. What matters is the feeling that something greater than humans is present, that the world is not just things we can see and measure. A Vietnamese cultural researcher once said, "The spinning palanquin is a cultural phenomenon deeply rooted in the life of the people, and it exists because it meets a very real psychological need, the need to believe that the deities are listening." Let me take you to 2 specific places. First, Phuong Vu Pata, Hưng Yên Province. This Pata was built during the Lý Dynasty, which means more than 900 years ago. The people worshipped here are National Master Du Dao Hang and King Lý Tân Tong, people who had the merit of teaching people to grow rice, build dikes against floods, and cure diseases to save people. Every spring, the festival takes place, and the most unique part is the moment when the young men of Tholak village carry the palanquin and rush into the river right in front of a crowd of thousands. In the cold water with the palanquin on their shoulders, they spin, the water splashes, the cheering from the shore, and when they step onto the shore, the crowd bursts out. This is not a performance by people who want to show off their strength. This is a prayer with the physical body. Second, Gikong Temple, Langsan Province.
Long Son is a northern mountainous province of Vietnam bordering China. The Kiệu Quay Festival is one of the largest and most unique festivals in this province. Tens of thousands flock from everywhere, crowding to stand on both sides of the street just to see the palanquin procession pass by. The palanquin here does not just spin. It also follows complex routes, stopping at sacred spots in the village, performing brief rituals, and then moving on. People standing by the roadside reach out their hands, not to block the palanquin, but to touch it, as if touching something that will bring luck for the whole year. What I want you to see here is, whether you go to Hoi An, Lang Son, Haiphong, or any countryside of Vietnam in the spring, you can encounter such moments. Each place has a different name, a different deity, a different way of processing. But the core, humans standing before the deities, praying and giving thanks, is the same everywhere. Let me say one thing straight. When foreigners look at festivals like this, there are two common reactions. One is, oh, how interesting, the indigenous culture is really beautiful. The other is, why are people so superstitious? Can't science explain it? Both reactions, in my opinion, miss the most important thing. The Vietnamese people have gone through more than 1,000 years of domination by China, then nearly 100 years under the French colonial regime, then decades of war. In all those upheavals, the country could be lost, kings could be overthrown, systems could change, but the village was still there, and the village guardian deity still resided in the communal house. That is why people say that the king's law yields to the village's custom, not because Vietnamese people do not respect the law, but because they understand that there are things even more important than the law. That is continuity, collective memory, the thread connecting one generation to another. The Palanquin Procession Festival is that thread. When a child is carried by their parents for the first time to stand and watch the palanquin pass by, that child does not understand anything yet, but they remember. Remember the drum beats. Remember the vibrant colors of flags and banners. Remember the feeling of the crowd, the smell of incense, the eyes of the adults when they look toward the palanquin with something that is very hard to name. Not quite fear, not quite joy, but a sense of belonging. 20 years later, that child grows up, maybe goes to university in Hanoi or goes abroad to work. But every spring, if they can return to the village, they will stand again in the old spot to watch the palanquin pass by. And in that moment, all the years of distance will vanish. They are again the child of yesteryear, standing next to their parents, belonging to a place and a community. That is the true value of these festivals. It is not about whether the palanquin spins or does not spin. It is not about whether the deity is real or not real, but that humans need a place to belong, need rituals to remind themselves who they are, where they came from, and who went before them. And the Vietnamese people, through thousands of years of volatile history, have found a way to do that not through books, not through laws, but through drum beats, through the footsteps of carrying the palanquin, and through the moment the palanquin begins to spin amidst the cheering crowd. Before finishing, I want to tell you a small detail that I think will stay in your mind longer than everything I have just said. In many villages, after the festival ends, after the palanquin is brought back to the communal house, after the incense burns out, after the crowd disperses, the people who carried the palanquin will sit down together, eat a meal together. The offerings presented to the deity, sticky rice, sweet soup, pork, are divided equally among everyone in the village. The old, the young, the rich, the poor. Everyone has an equal share. This is also a form of prayer. It is not praying with words, but by the action of sitting down, eating together, reminding themselves that no matter how competitive life is, they are still a part of something larger than themselves. When I stood watching a palanquin procession for the first time, I remember I did not understand anything. The gongs and drums were too loud, the crowd was too dense, the atmosphere was too strange. But there was a moment When the palanquin passed by very close, I felt something. It was not that I believed in deities. It was not that I fully understood the ritual, but that I felt I was standing at a very old point on the timeline, a point where hundreds, thousands of people before me had once stood with that same emotion. That is something that no museum, no history book can do. Only festivals can do that. Thank you for listening to the end. If one day you have the opportunity to visit Vietnam in the spring, do not just go to Hoi An ancient town or Ha Long Bai. Ask the locals, is there a festival in the village nearby? And if you're lucky, you will stand amidst the crowd, hear the drum beats, and see the palanquin begin to spin. I guarantee you, you will not forget.